You believe the most dangerous lie of your life, that being nice, available, and predictable would make someone fall in love with you. It doesn't. It never has. And Machiavelli knew this centuries ago. Politics is guided by reality, not ideals. And the reality is that the more you try to prove your worth, the faster you become disposable. The truth is harsh. No one begs for what they can have at any moment. What truly drives desire isn't romantic love, it's scarcity. The end justifies the means when you understand that showing less, denying more, and limiting presence is what keeps someone tied to you. Better to be feared than loved isn't cruel, it's logic. Respect and admiration sustain desire. Fragility and excessive giving destroy it. Want a shock? It's the mystery that makes her dream about you, not your availability. The psychological game is brutal. When you chase, you send a single signal: I am lesser than you. And no one desires what is lesser. The appearance of virtue in this field isn't about being perfect. It's about being enigmatic, disciplined, and selective. While most humble themselves for crumbs, the few who understand this code live the opposite. They become the trophy. And trophies don't chase anyone, they are simply conquered. Real human nature is inconvenient. It doesn't care about your good intentions, only your perceived strength. Loyal armies are built on quiet power, not need. Virtue and fortune belong to those who master the calculated use of force, whether in the silence that creates mystery or in the limit that commands respect. And here's the provocation. Are you ready to let go of the good guy illusion and become someone she truly fears losing? Today I'm going to show you this secret map, the strategies Machiavelli wrote for kings and princes, applied to desire. The code that transforms your presence into magnetism, your absence into longing, and your discipline into admiration. Get ready, because after this video, you'll never see love the same way again. And perhaps you'll discover for the first time why submission was never love. It was just its prison. There's a curious paradox in the human heart. The further someone moves away, the more we feel the urge to chase them. It's almost as if absence carries a secret scent, impossible to ignore. Machiavelli once said that politics is guided by reality, not ideals, and the realm of desire is no different. True human nature responds to scarcity, not abundance. When someone makes themselves overly available, the brain registers safety guaranteed, no risk here. And ironically, the end justifies the means in this invisible dance. Involuntary withdrawal creates tension, and tension ignites desire. Therefore, when we constantly try to prove our worth, we convey the exact opposite: need. And need, in the silent code of relationships, equates to invisibility. It's like a merchant shouting at the market. The customer passes by because excessive effort betrays a lack of intrinsic value. See how this manifests itself in real life. A professional who begs for recognition, overpraising their boss, never gets promoted. A friend who tries to always be available, never saying no, ends up forgotten when they really need it. And in a relationship, the more one tries to buy affection with exaggerated gestures, the more the other party becomes accustomed to this excess, as if it were an acquired right. Better to be feared than loved, said Machiavelli. But in the emotional realm, perhaps we should translate it this way: it is better to be respected than to beg for acceptance. When someone delivers value in a calculated way with virtù and fortuna, perception changes. The other begins to see it as rare, and rarity always creates fascination. Loyal armies are built precisely on this terrain. Trust is born when there is no desperation, only firm presence and constant adaptability. That's why so many end up stumbling into the same mistake, confusing insistence with love or uninterrupted presence with proof of loyalty. But true human nature doesn't interpret this gesture as proof of value, but rather as a cheap surrender. Think of a library. If all the books were left on the sidewalk, within anyone's reach, who would respect that knowledge? Now, put them on closed shelves with restricted access, and suddenly a line will form to get in. This is exactly how desire works. When you give everything away for free, you quench curiosity and stifle mystery. The appearance of virtue in this case is knowing how to balance, showing oneself present without begging, offering without dumping, keeping more than one gives. The game begins here, but goes much further, especially when we delve into the wound opened by Machiavelli's phrase that asks whether it hurts more to lose love or property. When Machiavelli uttered this phrase, many found it cruel. How can a man suffer more from the loss of his wealth than from the death of a loved one? Politics guided by reality, not ideals, is always disturbing because it dismantles illusions. The truth is that the human brain is pragmatic. It reacts to material scarcity as if it were a death threat. Love, however beautiful, doesn't guarantee bread on the table. And so the mind registers wealth as a symbol of security, of the continuity of life. The end justifies the means when survival is at stake, and this logic even appears in relationships when one loses perceived value, whether through lack of mystery or excessive self-giving. The other's brain simply recalculates the investment. Better to be feared than loved here means be irreplaceable in what you offer, or you will be discarded as a burden. Consider simple examples. When a couple separates, the fiercest fight is often not over lost affection, but over the apartment, car ownership, or joint savings. Because deep down, the brain understands that losing assets means losing choice, freedom of movement, and social status. Decisions based on real human nature always point in this direction. It's uncomfortable to admit, but people come and go from our lives, while resources shape where we live, what we eat, and how we are perceived. Avoiding hatred isn't just a political stance. It's also about protecting the emotional and material assets that sustain any bond. Loving without structure is like having an army without weapons. No matter how loyal, it can't withstand the first attack. The calculated use of force, in this case, means preserving the concrete foundations of life before blindly surrendering to idealism. And see how this is reflected in the game of desire. When someone tries to win through excessive giving, paying everything, always giving in, assuming invisible costs, they believe they're buying love, but in practice, they're training the other to associate their presence with the idea of a cheap resource. It's not love that's lost when that person leaves, it's the feeling of losing a benefit, and herein lies the hidden poison. If you're only worth what you offer in excess, you'll never be seen for who you are. Virtue and fortune go hand in hand precisely because it's not enough to have resources. You need to use them strategically, constantly adapt. Machiavelli didn't speak of romantic love, but the wound is the same. The brain doesn't love the way you think it does. It values what it perceives as scarce, rare, and powerful. And when you become a trophy instead of a beggar, you discover the invisible prize that transforms every relationship. There's a fine line between conquering and begging. While many waste energy trying to prove their worth, those who truly attract understand the secret of authentic scarcity. Machiavelli warned that politics is guided by reality, not ideals, and the reality is simple. Those who appear too cheap lose relevance. The end justifies the means when you stop chasing and become the prize. Think about it. A jewel doesn't offer itself. It waits to be discovered. Better to be feared than loved, in this context, means being respected for what you represent, not just for what you deliver. And when you assume the position of trophy, something changes in others' perception. Your presence becomes a privilege, not a routine. Your attention becomes a reward, not an obligation. And this subtle shift directly affects true human nature, which always responds more to what seems scarce than to what is in abundance. Consider a practical example, that co-worker who doesn't talk much, but when he does, everyone pays attention. He didn't waste energy trying to win anyone over. He simply chose the right moment to speak up, and his words became a trophy in the room. It's the calculated use of force. Less is more when used strategically. The constant talker loses impact because their availability is cheap. The same occurs in relationships. When someone is always available, they're never seen as special, but as a habit. Loyal armies are formed not by begging obedience, but by inspiring silent respect. Virtù and Fortuna reveal themselves precisely in this game, being rare without being arrogant, present without being predictable. Constant adaptability here means understanding when to retreat so your presence is felt, and when to show up so your value is celebrated. And there's a deeper layer. Becoming the prize isn't about feigning indifference, but about building a life that's already valuable in itself. When your routine, your mission, and your boundaries are well defined, you naturally convey authentic scarcity. Because you don't need to beg for space in any life, your own is already full of meaning. And that's what generates real desire. No one wants to unite with emptiness, but rather with overflowing. The appearance of virtue works as bait here. You seem to have much more than you reveal, and this aura creates magnetism. And then, when someone realizes they can't have unlimited access to you, only doses, they begin to value every gesture, every presence. It's like a rare perfume that's only smelled when you're far away, and precisely for that reason, it becomes unforgettable. When someone disappears, what truly lingers in the air is not the person's absence itself, but the symbolic trail they left. It's like a rare perfume. It doesn't need to be present to be remembered. It just needs to have permeated the memory. Machiavelli said that decisions should be guided by reality, not ideals, and the reality is that human beings value more what they can't touch all the time. The end justifies the means when you learn to moderate your presence, creating space for the other person to miss you. Better to be feared than loved can be translated in this game as, it is better to be remembered with rare intensity than to be tolerated with daily excess. Because the brain doesn't register exaggerated constancy, but rather contrast. What is too abundant becomes landscape. What is rare becomes a striking memory. Want proof? Think of the friend you haven't seen in years, but whose smile, a specific joke, or even their voice remain vivid in your memory. They weren't physically present, but they left a rare scent that won't fade. Now compare that to the dozens of people you meet every day, but you can barely remember what they said yesterday. True human nature values what creates a gap, not what overoffers. It's the calculated use of force. You don't need to be constantly available. You just need to make your presence felt intensely and then retreat. Just as loyal armies know when to retreat to protect their forces, you must also step aside at certain moments so that the other feels your absence as a silent summons. This is virtù and fortuna applied to desire. In practice, this means creating symbolic memories instead of seeking continued acceptance. It's leaving a conversation without an explanation, as if it were a closed library. The other person is left wondering what you meant. It's ending a date on a high note instead of waiting for the moment to fade into boredom. It's not spilling all your mystery at once, because too much mystery dissolves like smoke. Constant adaptability here is crucial. You don't need to disappear completely, but alternate presence and absence strategically. This way, when you step away, the other person misses not just your company, but your energy, your worldview, the impact you leave. This is the truly rare perfume. But the game goes further, because sometimes it's not the perfume, but the silence that seduces. Silence has always been one of the sharpest weapons in the game of attraction. It's no wonder Machiavelli insisted, politics is guided by reality, not ideals. And the reality is this: Those who talk too much lose their aura. Those who give everything away kill curiosity. The end justifies the means when you hold your tongue and let the other person guess. Better to be feared than loved here translates as it's better to be respected for mystery than trivialized by exposure. Because when you tell every detail of your life, expose every thought, reveal every intention, you kill the oxygen of desire. What was once an enigma becomes an instruction manual, and there's nothing less attractive than something that can be read effortlessly in a few pages. Silence creates space for imagination, and imagination is always more powerful than reality delivered unfiltered. Pay attention to the people you find fascinating. Often, they're not the most beautiful or intelligent, but the ones who leave questions hanging. The colleague who doesn't comment on his personal life sparks speculation. The woman who doesn't immediately answer her cell phone provokes unease. The leader who doesn't lay out all his cards in a meeting but leaves loopholes ends up being seen as more strategic. This is a calculated use of force. It's not that there's nothing to talk about, it's that one talks less than one knows. Loyal, self-contained armies don't share their complete plans. They keep secrets, revealing only enough to inspire trust. Virtue and fortune manifest themselves in the game of silence because whoever masters the mystery controls the narrative. Constant adaptability means knowing when to speak to enchant and when to remain silent to provoke. Want a practical exercise? Next time you're in a conversation, resist the urge to fill every silence. If someone asks about your routine, say half of it and leave the rest implied. If they question your plans, simply say, "It's going to be big," and smile. This appearance of virtue, speaking little but with meaning, creates a fantasy that holds more power than 1,000 words. Remember, when you give overly complete answers, the other person feels like they already possess you completely, and nothing loses value as quickly as something that feels taken for granted. Silence, therefore, is not an absence of communication, but the most powerful of presences, because it is in silence that imagination is born, and imagination breeds attachment. And if silence is already seductive, imagine what happens when you become a closed library, where each hidden page creates even more desire. A closed library holds more fascination than an open bookshelf on the sidewalk. The same is true of people. Machiavelli understood that politics is guided by reality, not ideals, and the reality is clear. What is protected gains value. What is exposed loses its luster. The end justifies the means when you carefully choose what to reveal and what to keep. Better to be feared than loved may sound harsh, but in the game of attraction it means it's better for the other to feel respect and curiosity than pity or boredom. When you reveal less than you know, you're not hiding weakness, but building atmosphere. Loyal, self-made armies don't hand over their entire arsenal at once. They keep secrets because mystery is part of their strength. Virtue and fortune lie precisely in measuring what is revealed so that the other can fill in the gaps with their imagination. See how it works in practice. A speaker who delivers endless slides loses the audience's attention. One who presents only one central idea leaves people hungry for more. A friend who never reveals everything about their life creates an aura of enigma around them, and others find themselves wondering what they really do when they disappear. This even applies to the financial market. Companies that reveal only part of their strategies keep investors on their toes, always speculating about their next steps. Decisions based on real human nature always point to this fascination with the inaccessible. A calculated use of force, in this case, is to say only half of what's said, leaving clues, releasing fragments. The scarcity of information is what gives information its value. A practical exercise is simple. Instead of telling your entire story at once, share just one chapter per encounter. If someone asks about your work, respond gracefully. It's challenging, but I like the results, and leave it at that. This space you create is like a library with closed doors. The other person knows the content is there, but they need to come back to access it. Constant adaptability means adjusting how much you reveal as the relationship evolves, without ever giving everything away. The appearance of virtue is showing self-control, not spilling everything in search of validation. And that's where fantasy forms, because the void you leave is filled by the other person's imagination, and this imagination, paradoxically, creates attachment. But be careful. Revealing too much, too soon, can trigger anxiety, and anxiety has a smell. Anxiety, however silent it may seem, is a perceptible scent and not a pleasant one. Machiavelli would remind us that politics is guided by reality, not ideals, and the reality is simple. Too much urgency reveals fear. The end justifies the means when you learn to pace yourself, because showing distress sends the message that you have no options. Better to be feared than loved here means it's better to be seen as firm and unshakable than as anxious and insecure. People smell anxiety like an animal smells blood, and just as predators attack fragile prey, the human mind turns away from those who show despair. Controlled coolness, on the contrary, engenders respect. Those who know how to wait, who act slowly, demonstrate power. It is the calculated use of force in its most subtle form. Examples are everywhere. The salesperson who calls 5 times in a day loses a client because anxiety sounds like desperation. The friend who responds to messages in seconds, never pausing, ends up predictable and lacking in magnetism. However, someone who displays calm, even in tense moments, conveys the impression of dominance. Loyal armies don't march hastily toward the abyss. They wait for the right moment to strike. Virtue and fortune are revealed in those who know how to control their timing, neither too early nor too late, but at the point where the impact is greatest. Constant adaptability, in this case, means not reacting in the heat of anxiety, but breathing and waiting for the strategic moment. This coolness isn't a lack of emotion, but emotional discipline. Practicing controlled coolness requires daily practice. If your heart races, take a deep breath and count to 10 before responding. If someone pressures you, smile slightly and say, "I'll think about it." If you feel the need to immediately prove your worth, remember, the more urgent you appear, the less rare you become. The appearance of virtue, in this case, is mastering yourself in the face of provocation, not giving in to haste. The human brain values those who remain unshaken because it unconsciously understands that this person has resources, internal armies, and stability. Those who live in the pilot of anxiety always seem like subjects chasing the approval of others. Those who master inner silence become sovereign over themselves. And this is precisely where the next invisible test comes in. When the other's silence isn't rejection, but merely an examination of their emotional stability. Few people realize, but many silences aren't rejection, they're tests. Politics, guided by reality, not ideals, shows us that in power games, whether in Machiavelli's palace or in modern relationships, silence functions as an invisible test. The end justifies the means when someone gauges your reaction to see if you're balanced or crumble at the first sign of indifference. Better to be feared than loved here translates as, it's better for her to see steadfastness in you than pity. If you beg, you're handing over your emotional weakness on a silver platter. If you remain calm and coolly controlled, you convey the idea that you have your own loyal armies. In other words, your life doesn't revolve around anyone's approval, and this commands respect. Her silence, in practice, is just a silent question. Do you need me to exist? A simple example, a message viewed without a response. Many panic, retype, send emojis, insist. The result? Immediate devaluation. Because anxiety has a smell, and in this case the smell betrays weakness. Those who wait, however, continue their routine, demonstrating virtue and fortune. They show they are not a slave to other people's attention, but master of themselves. Another example. In the professional environment, when a boss leaves you waiting for a decision, the anxious person pressures, loses credibility. The strategic person understands that silence is also part of the negotiation and responds with constant adaptability. This is a calculated use of force, not wearing yourself out prematurely, because deep down, it's not about the ignored message, but about the balance you demonstrate when reality doesn't move at your pace. The secret to passing these invisible tests is simple, but it requires courage. When silence comes, move on with your life. Read that book you've been waiting for, go to the gym, invest in a personal project, strengthen your inner armies. Show yourself you don't need immediate validation. The appearance of virtue is this self-control disguised as tranquility. Those who beg, lose. Those who continue building their inner empire, conquer. Remember, Machiavelli said that decisions must be based on true human nature, and the reality is that everyone tests the steadfastness of others. Passing these tests without wavering is the highest proof of silent courage. And when you learn to say no calmly, you realize that this invisible limit not only maintains respect, but creates the womb of desire. Few realize it, but no is one of the most seductive words in existence. Machiavelli already taught that politics is guided by reality, not ideals. And the reality is this: no one respects someone who says yes to everything. The end justifies the means when you understand that calmly imposing limits is not about rejecting, but about educating desire. Better to be feared than loved applies here surgically. It's better to be perceived as firm than to be laughed at for your fragility. Because respect is the womb of desire. It's where admiration is born, and admiration sustains attraction. When you calmly say no, you're not closing doors, but opening space for your presence to be valued. It's like a general refusing a miscalculated battle. Loyal armies don't waste their strength. They know how to wait for the right terrain. Consider practical examples. When someone tries to overstep your boundaries, asking for more time, more favors, more concessions, and you calmly respond, "I can't, not right now." Something shifts in the air. You didn't beg, you didn't over-justify, you simply stood your ground. This posture conveys virtù and fortuna. It shows that you govern yourself, that you're not a puppet to someone else's needs. In the professional environment, the employee who never refuses tasks ends up crushed by overload. The one who knows how to say no at the right time is promoted, precisely because their energy is seen as a valuable resource. Decisions based on true human nature reveal that people only respect what has limits. Without limits, desire evaporates. With limits, it expands. A powerful exercise is to practice saying no in small daily doses. If they invite you to something that doesn't add up, say, "Thank you, but I won't." If they ask for more than you can give, respond, "I prefer to maintain the quality of what I do." The appearance of virtue here is to remain calm, without aggression, but with firmness. The other person may even be frustrated in the moment, but this frustration instills respect. And respect breeds attraction, because no one desires what they consider disposable. Constant adaptability means understanding when to strategically give in and when to stand your ground. In the end, your well-spoken no echoes louder than 1,000 yeses said to please. And precisely at this point, the most sacred line emerges. The moment when kindness turns to weakness and admiration turns to contempt. Kindness is a powerful virtue, but when it crosses the sacred line, it becomes disguised submission. Machiavelli once said, "Politics is guided by reality, not ideals." And the reality is that when you try to please everyone, sooner or later you'll be seen as weak. The end justifies the means when you choose to be selectively generous, rather than a doormat for everyone to walk on. Better to be feared than loved applies here brutally. It's better to inspire respect through firmness than to beg for love through docility. True human nature values those who help by choice, not obligation. When you cross this line and offer without criteria, you lose your aura, your magnetism. The appearance of virtue, in this case, is maintaining kindness without sacrificing your own dignity. Clear examples abound. The co-worker who accepts all the extra tasks isn't seen as a hero, but as a useful slave. The friend who's always available to listen but never sets boundaries ends up ignored when he's truly needed. The man who does everything for his partner without ever saying no goes from being admired to being treated as inevitable. Calculated use of force means knowing when to extend a hand and when to retreat. Loyal, dedicated armies don't waste ammunition on pointless battles. Likewise, you shouldn't waste energy pleasing those you don't value. Virtù and fortuna come into play when your kindness becomes a conscious choice, not an automatic reaction. Constant adaptability lies in recognizing every kind gesture must be accompanied by firmness, or it becomes an invitation to abuse. In practice, test your own sacred line. Ask yourself, am I helping because I want to, or because I fear rejection? If it's the latter, you've already crossed the line. Practice saying, I like to help, but this time I can't, and observe the reaction. Those who truly respect you will accept you. Those who get angry have only shown that they never valued your essence, but only your usefulness. Respect is the foundation of desire, and there is no desire without a clear boundary. The appearance of virtue in this sense is being kind without becoming predictable. The secret is balance, giving when it adds, denying when it drains. This balance maintains your high image because your life doesn't orbit anyone else. It sustains itself. And it is precisely here that the figure of the sovereign of self is born, the one whose direction attracts company, while those who revolve around others implode. Life without direction is like a boat adrift. It can be accompanied for a while, but sooner or later, no one can stand the insecurity. Machiavelli once said that politics is guided by reality, not ideals, and the reality is that people connect with those who know where they're going. The end justifies the means when you prioritize your own path. Better to be feared than loved, in this context, means it's better to be respected for the steadfastness of your path than loved for losing yourself to please. Those who orbit someone else implode because they abandon their essence, and sooner or later, they're discarded. Those who walk with clarity, even alone, exude magnetism. The appearance of virtue here isn't arrogance, but poise, showing that your life is an ongoing project, not a void waiting to be filled. Consider simple examples. A friend who is always busy with their own plans attracts curiosity and respect because they seem to live on a mission. One who drops everything to keep up with others conveys the message that their life is unimportant. In relationships, the effect is even more visible. People who build solid routines, cultivate healthy habits, and follow a discipline naturally arouse desire, because no one wants to get on a sinking ship. Loyal armies follow leaders who know where they're going. They don't follow those who keep spinning in circles. Virtue and fortune emerge precisely in the ability to stay on course even when headwinds are blowing. Constant adaptability doesn't mean abandoning your direction, but adjusting the sails so as not to miss your destination. In practice, being self-sovereign requires choosing a direction, be it a personal project, a professional goal, or a spiritual discipline. It's starting the day knowing what you're going to build and not waiting for others to decide. This doesn't mean living in isolation, but rather having an inner empire that doesn't depend on external approval. The appearance of virtue here is showing that your life has purpose, and that anyone who approaches you is joining something already solid. This builds respect, and respect fuels desire, because no one is attracted to someone who has nowhere to go. Desire arises precisely from the privilege of participating in a world in motion. And when that world is consistent, routine and discipline become silent signals that invite others to want to be a part of it. True power lies not in what you show, but in what you build silently. Machiavelli knew that politics is guided by reality, not ideals, and the reality is that people gravitate toward those who build an inner empire. The end justifies the means when you decide to invest time in mission, routine, and discipline, because these three pillars speak louder than words. Better to be feared than loved here means it's better for her to respect your focus than to fall in love with a weak and dependent version. True human nature is enchanted by those who already have structure. The appearance of virtue in this context is showing consistency without shouting. The world notices when you wake up early, train, read, and perform. Your routine is the silent banner that there is something solid within you. Practical examples illustrate this well. A man with a clear mission, whether it's starting his own business or advancing in his career, exudes natural magnetism. He doesn't need to beg for attention because his life already has direction. The discipline of those who read daily, invest in themselves, and build something concrete is noticed from afar. Loyal armies follow leaders who show the way with actions, not promises. Virtue and fortune appear when you maintain the same pattern even on difficult days. Routine is the foundation. Those who don't have one fall into the routine of those who do. Constant adaptability means adjusting habits as life changes, but never losing your bearings. And this bearing is what awakens desire. She doesn't just want to be with you, she wants to be part of the world you're building. Applying this isn't a mystery, but it does require consistency. Set 3 non-negotiable points in your day. For example, reading for 20 minutes, exercising your body, producing something connected to your purpose. It doesn't matter if you're tired, do it anyway. The appearance of virtue is precisely this self-control that needs no explanation. Those who observe perceive and feel a silent attraction because routine and discipline are signs of inner power. Remember, Machiavelli advocated the calculated use of force, and in this case, strength lies in remaining constant when everyone else gives up. This constancy builds respect, and respect fuels desire. Because no one dreams of entering an empire of sand. It's invisible solidity that attracts, not empty talk. And when you combine mission, routine, and discipline, you discover the inner blades that cut both outward and inward. There comes a time when every man must look within and face his own weapons. Machiavelli would remind us that politics is guided by reality, not ideals. And the reality is that no one wins without sharp blades within themselves. The first is wholeness. Stop living in scattered pieces to please others and embrace yourself completely. The end justifies the means when this wholeness exacts the price of disappointment, but delivers the value of being whole. Better to be feared than loved translates here as, it is better to be seen as firm than to be loved halfway. The second blade is mystery, not to give everything away on a silver platter, because it is what remains hidden that fuels desire. The appearance of virtue, in this case, is to appear simple on the surface but profound on the inside. The third blade is self-control, not reacting to the first provocation, not begging for answers, not despairing over silence. It is the calculated use of force in its purest form. Those who master themselves have already won half the battles because loyal armies are born from inner respect. The fourth blade is the limit, knowing how to say no without guilt, understanding that respect is the womb of desire. Without boundaries, you become a carpet. With boundaries, you inspire. Virtue and fortune appear precisely in those who do not fear losing by maintaining a limit. Decisions based on true human nature show that only those who preserve their dignity are admired. Constant adaptability here means delivering each no with the right tone, firm but calm without needing to shout. And the fifth blade is mission, living for something greater than pleasing. Routine and discipline are the edge that keeps this blade sharp. Those with a mission don't beg for company, because the journey itself is already magnetic. The appearance of virtue at this point is to demonstrate consistency without needing to show off. But the truth is that applying these blades hurts. It hurts to be whole in a world that demands masks. It hurts to be mysterious when everyone demands exposure. It hurts to have self-control when anxiety screams. It hurts to maintain limits when the heart craves approval. It hurts to live on a mission when the solitary path weighs heavy. But it is these pains that sharpen the soul. Machiavelli knew, power is not born from naive kindness, but from well-calculated toughness. And it is precisely here that the final confession arises. That day when submission seemed like love, but was actually imprisonment. Every man has confused submission with love. He's believed that saying yes all the time was proof of affection, when in reality, it was self-abdication. Machiavelli knew that politics is guided by reality, not ideals. And the reality is that submission never generates respect. It generates pity. The end justifies the means when you understand that pleasing without criteria is losing value in silence. Better to be feared than loved. In this case, it's better to be respected for upholding your limits than loved for self-effacement. True human nature responds to what is imposed, not what is given on a silver platter. The appearance of virtue here is maintaining firmness masked by kindness. The confession is harsh. Many have called love what was fear of loss, and this illusion is costly. Think about the last time you said yes without meaning to. Maybe it was a heavy favor, a request that challenged your limits, an insistence you accepted only to avoid disappointment. At the time, it felt like love, but deep down, you knew it was submission. Loyal armies don't kneel on other people's ground. They stand firm on yours. Virtue and fortune reveal themselves when you choose yourself, even if the price is being misunderstood. Decisions based on true human nature show that submission only fuels abuse. And here's the invitation: turn the key from within. Train yourself to say no calmly, maintain strategic silence, live on mission, apply your 5 blades. The calculated use of force is this daily discipline of not selling your dignity in exchange for emotional crumbs. This map isn't easy, but it is transformative. It's learning to be whole, mysterious, disciplined, master of your own limits. It's stopping begging for presents and becoming the prize. It's exchanging submission for sovereignty, dependence for mission. The appearance of virtue becomes real when you build your inner empire. A life that doesn't need an audience to be valuable. Constant adaptability is adjusting without ever losing yourself. This is the silent shift from servant to sovereign, from carpet to throne. Machiavelli didn't speak of relationships, but his echo resonates. Those who don't understand true human nature lose. Those who do, rule. Now the question that remains is simple. How long will you call love what is actually fear? Perhaps it's time to play Machiavelli's psychological game, not against others, but within yourself. Now the truth is exposed. You spent your life believing that love was limitless giving, when in reality it was merely submission disguised as affection. Machiavelli once said that politics is guided by reality, not ideals. And the reality is that no one desires what doesn't command respect. The end justifies the means when you learn to say no, to remain silent, to cultivate mystery, to live on a mission. Better to be feared than loved in this game means being respected for your own worth, not loved for mutilating yourself to please. The appearance of virtue here is building a life so solid that your presence becomes a privilege. So the question is, how long will you betray yourself to appear lovable when respect is the only fertile ground for desire? The invitation is before you. The map has been delivered. Wholeness, mystery, self-control, limits, and mission. 5 inward blades, 5 necessary cuts to the soul. Do you have the courage to apply them? Because if you keep trying to please, you will be forgotten. But if you decide to become sovereign over yourself, your life will become an inner empire that naturally attracts. Loyal armies of your own follow those who lead themselves, not those who beg for approval. Virtue and fortune will always favor those who act according to true human nature, not illusions. Constant adaptability is adjusting without losing one's essence. So tell me, will you choose to be a trophy or a carpet? The decision is yours. Machiavelli's psychological game isn't about manipulating others, but about governing yourself. The question is, will you apply it now, or continue repeating the same mistakes that keep you invisible? Write in the comments, which of these blades hurts you the most? Integrity, mystery, self-control, limits, or mission? I want to know which one cuts deepest within you. And if this content resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue this journey. Because here, you will learn not only to understand Machiavelli, but also to play with reality. And reality always rewards those who have the courage to face it head-on.